Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I want to talk about something that I have got stuff in my beard, talked about in the past here on the channel and over on the Patreon page. And it's been a kind of a mixed bag on response. Some of you are, thinking the same thing and doing the same kind of research and preparing in the same way, and others think that I'm an absolute lunatic, completely off base, or even to the point of saying that I'm completely going against the Bible and against the Creator and the Father and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, I want to revisit it again. Not because of stirring up controversy, but because I think it's important. And I think if some of you kind of hear me out, um, maybe, I'm not trying to get you to think exactly like me, but at least give it a fair, a fair shot and a fair chance at me stating my opinions. Maybe it can help you be a little bit more prepared. What I'm referring to is all the stuff that's happened over the past year and really over the past many years. I mean, you could even go back to the creation of the United Nations, the writing of Agenda 20, Agenda 21, and then Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, the happenings over the past 12 months, the health crisis, and then all the stuff that's happened, um, advancements of technology, this push to eat, synthetic lab-created meat and radically change our agricultural systems all over the planet. It's quite possible, and a lot of people believe, that all of this stuff that we're seeing happening isn't just because they want to push for some type of global government, one world, new world order, one world government kind of thing. It's because they know or they believe that this planet is about to go through some very radical changes. And there is some scientific evidence to that. There's some data out there to indicate that. So one argument is that on their belief is that these things could be happening, and so they're trying to make some radical changes so that it keeps them in power, and taking the opportunity to make these changes because of the circumstances that will happen because of all these changes. There's also theories that go along with this that um, these potential changes on the planet possibly line up with end time, prophecies of, if you look at what it talks about in the last days of a third of, you know, the plants and the trees dying, and third of the food gone, and third of the people. All these kinds of these things that are talked about in the Bible, throughout the Bible, in Daniel and Isaiah and Revelation and Matthew. It's quite possible that some of these predictions or um, these things that they're saying could happen on the planet may line up with that. And so what I'm referring to, grand solar minimum is a big one, and that's something that we've talked about all the time. And I don't think any one of these things are necessarily globally catastrophic. But what's interesting is that there seems to be a few of these things, or several of these things, that could be happening all at the same time. One is the grand solar minimum. Grand solar minimums have about a 400-year cycle. So we've had many of them. The other one is looks like that our magnetic poles are shifting on this planet. There are, and I think I've got a graphic that is updated as of 2019, which I know is a couple of years old. I couldn't find one any sooner, any more recent. But from the data I've seen, it's moving even much further. So the magnetic north and the magnetic poles, they move every year, but they move incrementally, at least since we first discovered them back in the 1830s. Starting at around in the year 2000, they started moving faster. Then in 2019, much more substantially, and just in the last couple of years. The magnetic north used to be in Canada, and now it's over Russia. and it's moving very rapidly to the point that they're updating the position of the magnetic north, a few times a year, every few months, because it's moving so rapidly. And science, mainstream science, tells us that this planet's poles, magnetic poles, shift ever so often. That it's happened many times, and in the past, it may not be as cataclysmic as it would be today, because so much of our technology, satellites, GPS, is based on GPS and the satellites and that sort of thing. So it would cause a lot of havoc there. Then there's also a 2,000 year, it looks like, planetary alignment, which looks like it's probably going to happen in 2024, which is where the four gas giant planets in our solar system line up with the sun, to where the Earth is kind of in the middle of them, where they will be positioned in their track around the sun. And it's also believed that because of that, the magnetic pull of those gas giants and the sun can cause some havoc here on the planet. So if we're going through a pole shift, if we're having a grand solar minimum, if the planets are aligning in a way to cause some magnetic problems, the Earth's magnetic field has already weakened significantly. If in fact all these things are happening, and they're happening all around the same time, would it not be logical to say that they're probably going to cause some major havoc? There's all sorts of theories out there as to why, or as to what could happen when these things happen. Everything from polar ice caps melting, from certain parts of the planet that are now kind of the breadbasket becoming, barren wastelands, and other places like the Sahara Desert becoming a very lush tropical area, good for growing. I am not here to say that these things will or will not happen. What I am saying is that based on all the stuff that's happened, it does kind of make sense. If you look at all the political things that's happened, if you look at just the progression of things here in the United States and around the planet, and if you step back from the major stuff, the election and the health crisis and the all this gender issue, identity stuff, and racial, stop being so white kind of stuff. If you move away from looking at that, and then you see what a lot of these elites and these scientists, these organizations, global organizations, are talking about. It's like they're not even talking about that kind of stuff. They're talking about changing, major changes to our agricultural system. They're talking about, Bill Gates saying that all first world nations, advanced nations, need to switch over to eating synthetic foods, synthetic meats. They are, a lot of, talking about these advanced technologies that, AI and robotics and things that seem pretty far advanced, should have a greater role in our daily lives. They're talking about the health of the people very quite a bit, and then when you look at what's happened with this health crisis, of how they've implemented things and how it was so easily adapted and adopted and just followed by so many of the people, restrictions on movement, the obedience level when it comes to telling people what they have to put on their face or how they have to interact with people. A lot of these things could be setting us up, setting the stage for something that could be happening that's much more catastrophic in the next few years or few decades. And if that's so, and if you believe in the end times, and a lot of you that do that do believe in the end times like I do, that end time prophecies, also believe that we are living in those end times, wouldn't it make sense that these catastrophic things that could be happening because of all these different things going on with the planet could line up with those end time prophecies. I'm not saying they are. I'm throwing this out there to you. If all this is so, I think it's a much greater reason for us to become even more prepared. And not just prepared, like I've said in the last few weeks, in a standard, typical, mainstream prepper sense. And I don't really know how to put it other than that. Where you just buy some food and you stick it under your bed or in your closet and you go about living a normal life, everyday life. If these things are in fact happening, then you and I need to become more in control of our needs. This is something that has happened over the past century, where most governments on this planet, and especially the United States, has taken a people that were once considered extremely rugged, individualist, and independent. We asked for nothing. We didn't seek help. We didn't even want. Our ancestors 3 or 4 generations ago wouldn't even dream of asking the government for help or taking a check from them in any sort of way or any kind of assistance or any kind of retirement, anything. They wouldn't even dream of it. And it's to the point now that even conservatives are saying, where's my stimulus check? You promised me my stimulus check. I can't wait to get my tax returns. And I wish they'd do something to help us out with our health insurance every month. Get it right this time. And well, this disaster, everything's frozen over. My water pipe's busted and I don't have any electricity. I wish the government would sure hurry up and get here and take care of this for me. They need to bring me some food and some water and fix my house and get my electricity back on. You see how we have gone so far from what we once were? We have become a highly dependent nanny state. And the only real way to survive what we've gone through, what we're going through, what we're going to go through, especially if this stuff that I'm talking about with the pole shifting and the grand solar minimum and planetary alignment, kind of all that kind of stuff, if that really is going to happen, the only real way to keep our independence, and it's not just about feeding ourselves, but if it is truly the end times, and I'm not going to go into that in this video too much. I did in my Patreon video yesterday. We need to be as self-sufficient as possible. You need to learn how to grow your own food, folks. And I think it's going to get to a point, there's a potential, especially for most of us where you're located. It's going to get to the point that even a traditional garden is probably not going to be enough. The growing zones may change, so you may not be able to produce as much food in the same amount of space as you once were. We're probably going to have to start getting used to doing a lot of greenhouse gardening, maybe even hydroponics and aquaponics, which both are great systems. I've participated in building those systems and working in those systems, and they are a great way to produce a lot of food, especially in a smaller footprint of land. Depending on the government, number one, is going to make you very weak. It's going to make you extremely vulnerable. And it's also going to put you in a position that the only way that you and your family can truly survive is to basically do what they want you to do. It's a very much of a blackmail scenario where you get used to getting what they give you to the point that that's your only way to truly survive. And then when they start to change the rules, which they always do, and say, well, if you want to continue getting this, if you want to continue living, basically, continue eating, getting your medicine, having your utilities paid for, whatever, then you need to start doing this. You need to accept these new rules. You need to accept this new passport to get around town. You need to accept this new shot in the arm or this new chip in your hand, whatever it is. And then the best way to avoid that until the end of the time comes if it's in our lifetime, and even if it's in future generations. We teach them as we go along. My children, grandchildren, we're setting up a place for them if it doesn't happen in our lifetime. But the only way to avoid that, and it's not a sure 100% foolproof way, but it's the only way that we have a chance of avoiding that, is by being as self-sufficient as possible. I know that for some of you, this video sounds pretty extreme, and I'm not going to apologize for that. If you want to just, watch the, gentler, more mainstream, normal, how to fill a bug-out bag, and, how to, what to buy at the dollar store when you're prepping, that's fine. I've done those kinds of videos. You can look them up in my list. But if you're wanting what I believe is the more hardcore, this is what you really need to be getting yourself ready for. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Sure, we want to be ready for a tornado or a flood or a big snowstorm or temperatures, below record norms. We want to prepare for food shortages and even currency collapses and all that kind of stuff. But there is a potential here. I'm not saying it's absolute, but there is a potential here. When you start opening your eyes and reading this stuff they're not putting out there in the mainstream, or they're not putting it right in your face. It's there. You have to kind of dig for it. You see the stuff that's being reported by these scientists all over the country. Some of them mainstream scientists and some of them that aren't mainstream scientists. If you look at the things that are happening and you listen to the things that these global elites are wanting to implement, and start putting the pieces together and step back and look at it as one big puzzle and not just a bunch of individual weird things that they're doing, I believe in my heart that it all starts coming together. And what it tells me is that we are entering a new era, a new age. And in fact, we are. Without going into details of that, we have entered a new age. We were once, and I don't believe in all this astrology stuff, so don't start jumping on that bandwagon. But a lot of these elites, a lot of these world leaders and stuff, they do. And that is important to know what they believe. For those of you that didn't know, in December, this past December, a couple of months ago, we switched from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. The age of Pisces is considered the age of Jesus or Yeshua. And some say that the age of Aquarius is the age of Lucifer. I know this is a lot. This is some heavy things for some of you that are just getting started. Maybe I'll open some of your minds, and some of you may unsubscribe and never watch me again. But folks, I think there's a strong possibility. I'm a numbers kind of guy, and I think the numbers, when you add it all up, are showing that the odds are probably pretty good that a lot of this stuff is happening. It's on its way, or it's already happening. And that's, excuse me, probably why we're seeing such a rapid push for all these changes. And that's been something that many of you and many others I've seen and spoken with have said. The one thing we can't understand is why there is such a massive push all of a sudden. There's been progression to the left and progression to, New World Order kind of stuff for years. But it's like in the last 12 months, they've just, hit the supercharge button, and we're just like, the nitrous has just been dumped into it, and we are on fire heading that direction, and they're pushing hard for it. It's possible that's why. Because all of this stuff that some of these scientists are talking about, we're talking about happening over the next few years to the next decade or two. A lot of it's starting this year. Some of it's, they're saying, could be starting to happen in the next 3 years or so. I don't think it hurts to prepare on that kind of level, which is another reason, not the only, but another reason why we live out here, why we raise our own food and our own meat and our own vegetables, and have systems set up to where we can have our own water and our own heat and live as much as we can, as simple and off the land as possible. that kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight. But if you're truly dedicated, if it's something you really desire and really willing to make sacrifices and work hard at it, because it's very hard. This life isn't easy. It's not, you don't just at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I don't feel like cooking dinner. I'd just like to have a pizza. I'm going to get on my phone and I'm going to order a pizza, or I'm going to order Uber Eats or whatever it's called. It doesn't happen out here, guys. When it's cold and wet and snowy and blowing and everything, you don't want to get up and milk the cow. Well, you got to do it. It's not easy, but I believe it's very well worth it in the end. Again, I know this is a pretty deep, hard subject, but let me know what you think. And if it's something that you're wanting to explore and wanting to talk about more, then maybe I will do more videos. I have been talking about it over on Patreon, which I will continue to talk about it there. But maybe I'll bring this subject more to YouTube also. All right, folks. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.